Welcome back into the All Things Mizzou podcast presented by Missouri Tigers on SI. Missouri coming off of a 42-31 win over the Kansas Jayhawks. Louisiana Raging Cajuns on deck this week. Missouri looking to avoid a trap game after being ranked number 25 in the AP poll, making their first appearance on the poll so far this season. So a lot to talk about this week. We're going to take a look back at that Kansas win and then take a look ahead to Louisiana. The main message coming from Missouri this week is wanting, well, they haven't talked specifically about this, but from the messaging from Eli Drinkwitz, it's pretty clear they want to, well, one, they don't want to have any of their words about how they talk about Louisiana and where they're at as a team come back to bite them. And number two, they're really looking to obviously improve from the Kansas game, but make sure this game against the Raging Cajuns doesn't become a trap game. Joey Van Zummeren here, joined by Michael Stamps as always. Michael, just what are your thoughts at where Missouri stands this week and what we heard from Eli Drinkwitz yesterday?
I wrote about it this morning, and there weren't any words I could really use to describe Eli Drinkwitz's tone yesterday. It was, it made sense. He was just kind of not content and didn't really have anything to say about anything positive that they had done. And not to say that there weren't any positives. Obviously, there are, and we've talked about them and are going to continue to talk about them. And people were asking about them, other media members, and he just didn't really have anything to say about it. Which, I guess that's not the worst mindset on the planet Earth, and he wants to see his team continuously improve. So, all the power to him, I guess. I'm not surprised. Well, first off, no one really cares about the AP top 25 right now. It doesn't mean much at all. No one's really played anybody, and the teams that have played, good teams might not even be good teams yet. So let's wait a couple more weeks till we even give it some thought or credence that it does matter. But I think it is a decent symbol and signal about where Missouri is at right now. And, national attention never hurts. And for this Missouri team who, the expectations were higher last year, they were lower the year before that, and they were lowered again this season. I think it's kind of fun that this is a team that has a little more national recognition just because of some of the guys on it that, Bo Pribula obviously has been, if you look on Twitter, he's kind of all over the place right now, and people are surprised with how he's playing, and he's earning all these honors and things like that, which is really cool. But it's his first real time that he's had to show what he's capable of, and I good for him, right? Same thing with guys like Norfleet and Judis who have won these awards, but other players in the team, Ahmad Hardy, I saw a lot on social media about, and some other guys in the defense. So, it doesn't mean much. Eli Drinkwitz definitely doesn't think it means much. And, these guys get to a point where they see what people are saying about them on social media, and maybe they care, maybe they don't.
Here's what I'll say. It's interesting to listen to how Eli Drinkwitz talks about these things and the progression of it, because as much as he says we don't care about the outside noise, and we've talked about this on the show before, then he's going on Fine Bob right before the season and saying, looking at the preseason AP poll is you have to go look at your ex-girlfriend's Instagram account. Weird comparison, but he's aware of this, and sometimes he'll mention it. He was aware of a reporter picking Kansas over Missouri. Now, I don't really think that's their main source of motivation. I believe him in that, at least. But I'll also see, I think he's very intentional about the message he puts out there about his team, and going into this week of media and what he was going to say about his team, again, was very intentional of making sure none of their words would come back to bite them. So, especially with the AP poll ranking, like you said, Michael, they're not only is one of their voters not helping give them much credence, but especially this early in the regular season, it's hard to really know who is good and who is not, besides from anything that we've talked about all off season of who they're getting through the transfer portal. So that's that. Like you said, this Missouri team is getting a lot of praise for their week 1 or week 2 performance. Bo Pribula named best quarterback in the country. Brett Norfleet, best tight end. Judice, SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week. Outland Trophy Award as well. So a lot to go around there. But our main takeaway after this Kansas game and our post-game reaction was just like, hey, at the end of the day, this is a good win for Missouri. This is a good win on their resume, not necessarily because of the opponent. I don't think Kansas is going to be a team at the end of the year that people are going to be shocked that Missouri was able to beat. At least you would hope not for Missouri's sake. But as far as how they were able to win it, I mean, anytime you can score 42 points on a Power 4 opponent, a game where you have to fight in all 4 quarters, I mean, especially because you didn't, show up in the first quarter really, though. So even with that, though, I mean, that's the main thing to take away from it, I guess. But even with that, as Eli Drinkwitz spent no time wasting to get to, there's a lot to improve on. And I think Eli Drinkwitz is probably conscious, not that he's looking ahead to South Carolina and getting ahead of himself, but very conscious that they open SEC play earlier than usual, and in that first SEC game have to take on a pretty tough opponent. And so this is really, I mean, they have UMass after they play South Carolina. That's in week 5. But this time right here is where you really have to get out of any of those preseason bugaboos that you have. And so it makes sense, again, to really be this focused on all of this. I think let's start with the problems and then we can get to the positives. Because there is, even though Eli Drinkwitz had a hard time identifying those yesterday, I think there is some things positive to take away from both sides of the ball. First off, with the offense, this is kind of one of the main things Eli pointed out was just the self-inflicted wounds in those key situations. I mean, one, not only in the situation when Missouri puts themselves down 21-6 because of mainly because of Bo Pribula's fumble and then the bust they had in the secondary, but then also pointing out, they go up 28-24 and then they allow Kansas to go up 28-31. And then after that, just a lot of more little detailed things that Drinkwitz saw as far as key execution that they weren't able to do. And so I definitely think the self-inflicted wounds are a part of it. Again, against a better team, those mistakes are probably going to hurt you a lot more. I don't know, at the end of the day, a 15-point deficit in the first quarter isn't impossible to overcome, but it's definitely a hard swing of momentum to overcome that wave. So other teams probably not going to be as forgiving with that. And then the main thing that stuck out to me offensively to improve on is just the offensive line. It's blocking. Same thing we circled in week 1, same thing we circled in fall camp. The interior of the offensive line, especially in that first half, just so many plays where they were not getting much push off that line, and Ahmad Hardy and Jamal Roberts were just kind of running into a cloud of dust. The wide zone improved throughout the game, as Drinkwitz said. Some good moments for the offensive line. At some points, there were some plays where Bo Pribula had good protection. I thought Caden Green at left tackle looked a lot better than he did in week 1. There was some plays where he just straight up, I thought, made some really great plays in holding on to his guys. So that's my main thing offensively. What did you think of the offense, Michael?
Yeah, I don't I don't have anything different to add outside of what could have been better. I liked 2 quotes about what Drinkwitz said about both the things that you just said. One, he said that Bo Pribula fumble really threw everything out of whack, and it really, if you going back and watching the game, and if you guys go back and watch the game, it did kind of disrupt the flow of we score, they score, we score, they score, because that's kind of what it felt like. That was a really big advantage that Kansas just did not take advantage of, really, or they did, and then they didn't continue the momentum. But at the same time, Missouri's response to that Bo Pribula fumble and Bo's response to his fumble was pretty darn impressive, and I'm sure that was a good motivating tool for him to make sure that at the very minimum didn't happen again in that game. And then on the offensive line, I forgot what quote I was going to use, because why wouldn't I? But if going back and watching the game, I agree. The interior looked rough. Oh yeah, that's what it was. He said something about Jamal and Ahmad having to pick up blocks that they shouldn't have to be blocking defensive linemen. There should be unblocked defensive linemen or defensive ends, defensive tackles. And you could go back and pretty clearly see that was the case. So I think if we're being nitpicky, I think Bo. I think we talked about this a little bit post game that Bo was still a little bit what's the word I'm looking for? Like finicky, a little jittery in the
Right.
in the pocket, something like that. And a little bit maybe slow on the decision making. Kansas did a really good job. I don't know if we talked about this at all, but Kansas did a really good job of making sure he didn't get out of the pocket or didn't get any or gain any explosive rushes. And off the top of my head, I don't think he did. I think that happened a lot in the first half, caused him to sit down more in the pocket in the second half. And I think that led to some sacks, him just kind of standing still there. And there's one sack off the top of my head in the second half where he probably could have, moved a muscle and avoided that or tried to avoid it. So that still needs to improve. But if we're going to shift over to the positives here in a second, I feel like the positive still has to be Bo Prabula. Again, I said this post game for the people who thought that he couldn't throw the football. I don't know where that came from, and I can see how you are, if you were speculating it instead of doubting it. I'll give you a little bit of benefit of the doubt there. I feel like I was even speculating whether or not just because there wasn't on the tape, but his ball placement has just been incredible. You look back at a few of the throws, Donovan Alubade's one-handed catch. I mean, obviously it's an incredible catch that he had to do some work to bring it in, but a money throw. There is a Marquise Johnson comeback route in the first half that was just on the money. And then there was the Kevin Coleman, I think it was the fourth down conversion, Kevin Coleman.
Yep.
Yeah, and that throw, I mean, again, incredible catch, and he got hit and he had to make that catch, but that throw was as precise as you'll see. So his ball placement has been, pretty darn remarkable so far. And he's done it, in the middle of the field, and has hit a few deep balls as well through both games. So Bo Prabula, outside of maybe improving in the pocket and his pocket awareness, which it's not bad, but you could tell that that's probably something he's still getting used to. And it's a speed of the game and pace of play thing, and he's still probably getting comfortable in the game setting and with his teammates and things like that. So that seems like something that'll continue to come along a little bit. But when it comes to him throwing the football, I can't complain. Again, there are still maybe a few decisions that are like, against a better defense that might get batted down or picked off, but for the most part, he's put the ball in some extremely tight windows and has been very impressive. Kevin Coleman and Brett Norfleet have kind of become his top targets, it seems like, and they've been very good so far. We need to get Brett to stop hurdling. I know he thinks it's fun. It won't be fun if he gets hurt again. I didn't realize watching that clip back that he actually trucked the guy afterward. And I know we had shoulder issues last year. I don't know if that was the same shoulder. I don't really want to think about that, but keep that in mind. I guess, but he was great. And, he was just what we knew he was. He can get open and can run routes, has good hands, but he does a lot after the catch too. And then Kevin Coleman kind of proved to be that reliable slot guy that we all knew he was. So impressive stuff in the offense. Jamal Roberts and Ahmad Hardy as well. Obviously both incredible. And I think I mentioned this post game that Jamal's stats might be slightly inflated by his 63-yard touchdown. Not that makes a difference at all because it was an incredible run, but both of those guys obviously played great. And I wrote a story yesterday. I talked about it a little bit about other SEC running back duos so far in the conference. And there's no reason that they can't be the best one. They have the most rushing yards of any two running backs combined in the conference right now. So that's probably a pleasant surprise. I think we knew that Jamal could be a productive player, and I'm sure they knew it. But through two games, you'd have to think that this is a bit of a shock. Not a shock, I guess, but slightly surprising. And again, that that big rush did make a difference. But Jamal didn't really have much to say when it came to talking about him and Ahmad being a duo, but it's pretty clear that they do counter each other well, but have that kind of similar energy. So yeah, there are definitely things this offense needs to improve on. But as long as Bo Prabula is throwing the ball, the way he's been throwing the ball so far, it's pretty easy to see that this Missouri team can win a lot of games.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. And what we talked about post game was like, at the end of the day, there's a ton of reason to feel confident in this core, ton of reasons to feel confident in the players you invested in, and Bo Prabula being at the top of that. Again, it's just going to be a big test. I know we talked going into the Kansas game, it's going to be a big test, and we're going to find out a lot about this team and Bo Prabula. But again, it's just going to keep on getting raising that bar, especially next week with South Carolina going up against Dylan Stewart and some other great pass rushers there. As far as the other things on the offense, I also think with Bo, what could help with as far as being finicky and moving too much in the pocket, I think having a better offensive line protection will definitely help that. For two reasons. One, not only because obviously if you see a guy breaking three from or about to break free off his blocker, then yeah, you're going to be a little more jittery than you need to be. But then also like just the trust in the offensive line, and not to say that Bo doesn't trust his offensive line right now, but it takes time, it takes games, it takes snaps to establish that. And so having that trust will definitely help out a lot. You see it a lot with quarterbacks where if their offensive line is constantly giving up pressures, the quarterbacks really suffer. Not then on plays where there's not even pressure because they're looking down a lot more than they should, and they're moving around a lot more than they should just because of that fear. So that's that on Bo. Interested to see. I think that's, it's the top area. Drinkwood's highlighted on where Bo needs to improve. So I think that's kind of the top thing to see how he continues to learn and grow off of that. As far as Brett Norfleet, like what you said about him, I think it was fun to see the different ways they used him. Ton of pre-snap stuff for Brett Norfleet, and it's obviously a lot of fun when you can have a 6'6", 250 guy, 260 now maybe, where you can just send them from one side of the offensive line to the other, have them pull, especially on that wide zone, and there's just ram into a guy at full speed. I think that's really fun and fits Brett Norfleet's personality well. And so they also used him quite a bit at H-back. They used him. There was one play as a tailback he was lined up as in a pony package with Ahmad Hardy on the other side that I thought was fun. And so there was 10 plays, according to Pro Football Focus, 10 snaps Brett had where he's lined up in the backfield in this game against Kansas. Last year, Brett had 12 snaps in the backfield for the whole entire season. So it definitely seems this is a role, this place where they like him at. And as we talked about all offseason with the tight ends, and him overall really can open up so much with this offense. Also saw Jude James. He got 4 snaps, but, those were he had a role when he was in on those snaps. The very first play Missouri has Jude go out for a deep route that takes a defender off of Brett. So interested to see how those two continue to develop their roles in the offense. But that's what I got. Anything else on the offense, Michael?
Yeah, I actually saw something on Twitter earlier this morning that really made me think. And I don't have any specifics to back this up, but it was just about the offensive play calling a little bit. And so far, and again, I don't want to get too presumptuous because the opponents have been Central Arkansas and Kansas, and obviously, people kind of questioned the play calling with Kirby Moore last year, and why is Luther not getting the ball, or just get the ball in his hands and get the ball in Marquise's hands and things like that. And so far, they've been able to do that, and I don't know if it's something internal where it's like maybe these guys are just more bought in or patient or something like that. But I have found it really interesting that they've the offense has had no issue getting playmakers the ball, and it's also, again, it's only 2 games, but it's been a let's feed the hot hand type of thing. Or maybe I'm reading too much into that, and it's just who's open at the moment. But week one, it was Marquise, and he was open a lot, and they did a lot to get him open. And maybe that's a matchup they liked. I don't know. But it was Kevin Coleman this last week. Both found him early, and he kept finding him the rest of the game, and Brett became reliable as well. So I don't know if there's anything different going on. Maybe Bo's just doing a better job of finding these guys than Brady Cook did last year. But that kind of bleeds into the whole we're going to get the tight ends involved, which it seems like is something that's said every single year. And this year it's been the case, which is fun. And even if Jude is not doing anything significant, they're still getting him involved. And it seems like if there's a place where we think he can get in and make a play, we're going to give him the opportunity to make a play. So I maybe need to go do a little bit more of a deep dive on some of the play calling so far and see what's worked and what hasn't worked. But I mean, it's not incorrect to say that these guys are getting the ball and they've been able to do their thing and make plays. I mean, even on Kevin Coleman's, I forgot how long it was, but reception at the end of the first half, the 50-something yards. I mean, it's not like that was all the way down the field. He had to go do that and make the play himself, right? So I think that says a lot about what this offense has been able to do so far. But
onto the defensive side of things, again, a lot to be improved on here, specifically with the Boston secondary. Drinkwitz had talked about all year last year how explosive plays were a problem for them last season and continuing into this year with the plays that Kansas was able to get. And, I think a lot of that, as we talked about going into this week, this Kansas offense did a really good job with the misdirection, freed up a lot of opportunities just with that distraction, that eye candy in the backfield, and they bid on that quite a bit. Missouri did. And then Drinkwitz talked about how they kind of overcorrected and did a lot of zone coverage that Kansas then took advantage of as well. So definitely some things to figure out there. Drinkwitz said, as specifically with the cornerbacks, somewhat, no huge complaints besides those coverage busts and that they need to improve on that, but happy with how the personnel is doing there. Also, Drinkwitz saying that they didn't affect the quarterback the way they wanted to, not at the level they wanted to. So definitely some things to work on there and watch as well. Anything else on the defense, Michael?
One thing I thought that was interesting with the secondary, he said that what they were doing in man coverage was fine, and that he said post game last Saturday that they were just kind of picking apart the zone. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to go see that that's what was happening. So it's not like these were super like fade routes, like in motion deep balls. It was a lot of cutbacks and things like that. And that kind of, it's pretty, clear too that that's kind of a communication thing. And again, we talked about this in the post-game reaction too, that Jalen Daniels is just a really good quarterback, and he is experienced and knows, where to look and how to analyze the defense. So I think that makes a difference too. But yeah, nothing crazy to add there. With the defensive line, I thought it was kind of funny because Zion Young said it wasn't very good. The pass rush wasn't very good post-game. Eli Drinkwitz said the same thing, and Chris McClellan said, yeah, it's fine. So maybe he just didn't understand the question. I don't think they're bad. Again, Kansas has a decent, respectable offensive line, and I think you would probably expect more from Damon Wilson and Zion Young and those guys. And Darius Smith and on and on and on. So, it luckily hasn't made too much of a difference yet. Obviously they managed to defend the run just fine. It got to the point where they just weren't handing the ball off at all. I don't remember how many carries did Daniel Highshaw had 6 carries, and LaShawn Williams had 5 for 3 for -5 yards. So they just they physically could not run the ball, which is impressive. So that's something you can say is a positive, even though Eli Drinkwitz probably would disagree with me. But yeah, the pass rush definitely can be better, but I don't think it's been hyper negative bad so far at all. But the stats might not reflect it. And you probably want to, go get after the quarterback more and hit him a little more, but I don't think it's been terrible at all so far.
Agreed. All right. Now let's focus on Louisiana. Interesting team here. Eli Chinkwitz said that they beat a Power 4 team last year. I looked at what Power 4 team that was he's talking about. He's talking about Wake Forest, and it wasn't even in the Gasparilla Bowl. So looking at this Louisiana team, they got Michael DeSarmo as their head coach. 2 strong running backs are kind of the strength of their team. But the main thing going for them is that Walker Howard suffered a season-ending injury last week. Walker was the guy. He doesn't have SEC experience in terms of playing time. He didn't play, but formerly a player at LSU and Ole Miss. I'm sure he got a few little bit of playing time at both those schools. 4 attempts at LSU and then 6 over 2 years at Ole Miss. But at the very least, recruited to SEC schools, highly touted prospect. But now he's out for the year, and they're relying on a redshirt freshman, it seems to be their starting quarterback. Michael, what can you tell us about this Louisiana team?
I was thinking back to Tuesday when a fellow reporter asked if a quarterback by the name of Lunch Winfield would be starting. And unfortunately, I don't think that will be the case, but man, what did that be? I mean, what a name. What a name. It's not going to be Lunch Winfield, though, even though his name is incredible. It looks like it's going to be freshman Daniel Beal. He played in his second college football game last week against McNeese, and he started, and he was fine. 86 yards and a touchdown, 14 for 22. Also added three carries, 18 rushing yards. He's a not very experienced freshman, didn't have the most high school pedigree ever. So I don't want to say he's not going to be a threat, because that is probably a disservice to the Louisiana offense. But I would like to think that Missouri was, in the pre-scouting process leading up to this one, they were probably more worried about Walker Howard. It's an unfortunate injury. Looked like he was finally starting to get a chance to, show off what he could do. Didn't, like you said, didn't get much opportunity at LSU, Ole Miss. So it's going to be Daniel Beal. He's not overly a threat on his legs, but he has a solid arm on him. Could be one of those situations where the lack of film maybe makes it harder to pick up on his tendencies and what he does, but he does have at least he has a game and like a couple extra snaps under his belt. So something to keep an eye on there. Like you mentioned, Bill Davis and Zylan Perry are kind of the 2 big names on this offense at the running back spot. Bill Davis has 190 rushing yards so far. Sophomore there. He ran for 132 yards and a touchdown, 5'9", 235. So kind of a little bit of a bowling ball, so to speak, but he's a very good player. They have a solid offensive line. Zylan Perry as well has 140 rushing yards this season. So they have a good 1-2 punch with those 2 guys there. And then leading receiver is Shelton Sampson Jr., another former 5-star who was on that same LSU team as Walker Howard. He just didn't really get an opportunity to do anything there, trying to kickstart his career. He's been fine. The lack of any sort of passing game has hindered his stats, but if you go watch the first 2 games, he made a few solid plays. So he has the frame of a 5-star and the athleticism of a 5-star athlete. He's 6'4", 195. You can see why athletically and physically he would have been gifted that ranking. I'm sure he's still waiting to get a chance to show off a little bit, just because, like I said, their quarterback situation and the passing game has been really out of whack so far. But he's going to be Daniel Beal's top target. You'd imagine he gets the most attention of any of the receivers. Kadarius Wade is our next guy up. He has 25 yards and 2 receptions. Shelton Sampson has 5 receptions. Tight end Caden Jensen has 4. Then everyone else has 2 or 1. So there just hasn't been much going with this passing attack. Their opening week against Rice was kind of a weird one. It was lower scoring. So the passing game has been kind of out of sync, and Walker Howard going down doesn't help that situation at all. So you would imagine that the running game is going to be the defensive focus, and that seems to be something that Missouri has done pretty well so far. So we'll have to, I guess, keep our eyes on anything else that could happen in the passing attack. Excuse me. We'll have to keep our eye on anything else that could happen in the passing game, but you would imagine that shutting down Bill Davis and Zylan Perry is going to be the priority for the Missouri defense.
Well, we should mention with what you were talking about Walker Howard there, the news today that Sam Horn will be out for the season as expected with tibia injury. The only reason I forgot about this and didn't bring it up at the top is because it was what we have expected just from the way it's been talked about by Eli Drinkwitz all along, and the fact that Sam Horn was out there in crutches and a brace, not only at halftime of the Central Arkansas game, but also while watching this Kansas game. Again, really, we've talked about the aspect of Matt Zollers being the backup quarterback. We've talked about the angle of, just how unfortunate it is for Sam Horn. But just the confirmation there. So a tough deal. And now the question becomes, is he going to try to have that balance of, really, if with the way Bo Bula is playing right now, I don't see the point of Sam Horn, trying to balance starting with the Dodgers in the spring, coming back with Missouri football next fall. I struggle to see the point of that to be a backup. It's been done before by players, but I don't see that happening for Sam Horn. So just a unfortunate timeline for him for football. But again, the greatest thing for him is that more than likely, I'm not an expert on how leg injuries like this can affect you in baseball. I can definitely see how if it was with his plant leg, it would be a lot more detrimental to his baseball career. But again, at the very least, it seems like he'll be good to go for baseball. So wishing him the best in that area. What did I want to talk about? I had one more thing I wanted to bring up.
Tony Bryant.
Yes. There's something about this game. Oh, well, just with Robert.
Oh, yeah.
Meyer. One last thing to talk about this Missouri football team with, as far as the injuries and how they're dealing with those. Robert Meyer taking over for Blake Craig on kicks, and then Oliver Robbins on kickoffs. When Oliver Robbins did, no issues. If anybody, Oliver Robbins is definitely the same mantra that goes for the offensive line, goes for Oliver Robbins, and also the way some people talk about the government. You don't want to hear about your government. You don't want to hear about Oliver Robbins because that probably means he's doing something bad. So in this first game, though, unless he just becomes like a touchback ace or like is great at pinning guys at the 1 yard line. But so far in this game, 6 kicks, 3 touchbacks. That's good rate, 62-yard average. Obviously had this situation where Missouri broke the rules because the officials told them to on that punt/free kick situation. Robbins was good there. Myers, as we talked about after the game, he misses that extra point because the interior of the field goal unit just completely collapses. And the question we had after the game was just the development of how he's going to build that confidence within himself and within the coaching staff to be able to attempt long kicks, because we were definitely questioning, like, okay, like you're going for 4 or 5 fourth downs in this game. Like, do you really have that trust in Meyer? And as we talked about after the game, some of that was just straight up game situation where it was very reasonable to go for it there. And I think those decisions paid off for Missouri. And then also Drinkwitz said, like, they have confidence in Robert to kick up for like all the way back to 52 yards. Obviously, in more pressure situations, and I think they're always going to consider the down and distance there when it's fourth down, and just the situation is going to come into account. Like, just because of the track record, like just because there is no resume and he's a true freshman, like at the end of the day, ultimately they would have more confidence in Blake Craig in any situation. But this is obviously the deal they find themselves in, and we'll have to see how they continue to react with it. But the main thing for Drinkwitz was saying, Robert, they want him to be able to get those easy kicks in. He was good from 20, he was good from 25. They want him to continue to do that, continue to make his extra points. And then from there, I mean, find his footing, find his process, and then from there get a little more comfortable with throwing him out there after that. So that's that. Any final thoughts on Missouri football before we talk about Tony Bryant and everything else going with basketball recruiting?
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought the place kicking stats along with you. That's powerful stuff. I agree. I don't know what else I could say about Oliver Robbins at the moment. With Robert Meyer, I mean, I feel good about the situations that they put him in against Kansas. And you would think that for a true freshman at his position, that really can be detrimental. And that is like one of the positions in football where if you don't do your job well, you're going to get the attention, and it would be easy to just have your confidence shattered very quickly if you miss a game-winning field goal or you miss two that you should have made under 40 or whatever it is, right? It would be very easy for his confidence to get messed up. So I think they're putting him in good situations so far. I really everything else I can add is it'll be interesting to see what it looks like moving forward and what that confidence boosting process looks like moving forward. And will we see him kick from 30 or 35 this week? I would be curious to see if, they maybe give him a shot at a longer one this week, just because you would think that, 3 points won't matter against Louisiana. You would hope that's not a detrimental score, that if he misses, it's not going to make that big of a deal. So it'll be interesting to see if they give him any longer looks just like that, because at the same time, missing a 50-yarder against Louisiana probably won't kill the confidence. So that's an interesting process to see moving forward. Just in general, such a weird start to the season, which I never really thought about this way. But you got an easy game, then you got a harder one against Kansas, then you go back down, and then you got a hard one against South Carolina, then you go back down to UMass, and then you're right back on it again. So really odd start to the season in terms of the schedule. I mean, in multiple ways, because they don't hit the road for quite a long time, but it's a bit of a roller coaster with the level of opponents they're playing, which I just thought of 30 seconds ago. So that'll be interesting.
Right. I wanted to mention that at the top. The other thing I was going to say with as far as the way Drinkwitz is talking about this team right now, I think he's just wanted to keep the energy consistent through the stretch of the opening season. Because, yeah, it's an odd one. Not only, like we said, they're starting SEC play a week earlier than they usually do, at least as they have for the past 2 seasons before this. But yeah, I mean, go Central Arkansas, and then you play your biggest rival for the first time in over a decade, then Louisiana, then South Carolina, ranked number 11, one of the toughest teams you're going to play all year. Then UMass, at least they're not playing in Amherst this year. But then they have a bye week, and then Alabama. And after Alabama, you have that game on the road against number 24 Auburn for your first road trip of the year. So it's a slope for sure that Drinkwitz is trying to stay steady on.
I actually want to add one more thing that I meant to mention beforehand, and it's completely off topic. But last week, Missouri-Kansas, the most watched game on ESPN2 since 2022, which is pretty impressive. Obviously, it was an incredible atmosphere. I don't think much else needs to be said about that. Most of the people watching were either there or saw videos of people who were there, and it's been well documented. But we've a lot of us have been talking about College Game Day next week, which they have a really, really exciting opportunity to bring it here to Columbia against South Carolina. Both teams, God, if both teams aren't ranked, serious issue. Someone went very, very wrong here in week 3. But I just want to throw that out there. The slate of games, in my opinion, matches up pretty well for it to come to Columbia. We saw what SEC Nation was like. We were both there. I got to go on set, and it was incredible atmosphere all of Friday and then all of Saturday morning. If that doesn't add any fuel to the fire on top of the viewership that this football game got and the atmosphere at the game on Saturday, that doesn't add to any sort of hope. I don't know. I don't know what will. So I just wanted to add that one in there too. Also, the fact that we got to see a historically viewed game on Saturday was pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. The game day was something I wanted to bring up as well. And especially just because I think Missouri is a team that, not that I think it's purposeful, although I'm sure some Missouri fans think it will, but like game day, like it's been, I guess you could say, a little surprising that they've managed to not be at a Missouri game, whether that be in Columbia or somewhere else, over the past 2 years as one of the SEC program on the rise. There's a lot of storylines there. Eli Drinkwitz is a popular figure, and so it has been surprising. I think this game against South Carolina is a really good opportunity for that, because if you're looking to tell the story of the SEC program on the rise in Missouri, South Carolina is a perfect match for that as well. And Shane Beamer is certainly entertaining as well. You got the quarterbacks, Lenora Sellers as a star, Bo Prabula on the rise. I think there's a lot for College Game Day to like about the set. So, and again, like you said, the fact that it was the most viewed game on ESPN2 in 3 years, 1.8 million viewers is pretty impressive. And just what I'm sure they're taking a look at what SEC Nation did this weekend and the environment that was there. Paul Feinbaum saying multiple times that the crowd they had on the show on Friday on campus was probably the best crowd they've ever had for an on-campus visit. So a lot of things going for Missouri in that. The biggest games they're competing against really are Illinois and Indiana, Florida and Miami. Wouldn't be too worried about Auburn at Oklahoma, because they would call it game day was just at Oklahoma for the Michigan game. So would definitely be exciting and would make for exciting, month, 4 weeks to start the season for Missouri. And again, like you said at the top, to have that national attention does mean something, even though it is rat poison. The team doesn't need to be listening to it or paying attention to it. Like, it definitely does for a team that, going into this year, I had talked about, who is the star on this team. Like, the only real answer is Eli Drinkwitz as far as popularity. Because outside of that, Kevin Coleman definitely makes a good argument. He's been around the country for the last 3 years. He was on one of the biggest college football teams with, as far as spotlight goes, in quite some time, playing with Coach Prime at Jackson State and Travis Hunter there as well. He's led the SEC last year in receiving yards, at least as far as returning production. But again, there definitely was not a Luther burden. It definitely helps that Kevin is a St. Louis guy as well. But your quarterback is a first-time starter, Ahmad Hardy. A lot of people know about him for sure, especially in the college football world. That people that pay attention know Ahmad Hardy. People that pay attention know Damon Wilson. But having to create that own stardom now, create that own path, and so far they're doing that very well. So that's that on Missouri football. Wanted to talk very briefly about this basketball team because of the big commitment with Tony Bryant earlier in the week. 2 5-star commits for Dennis Gates and the Tigers. Me and our basketball writer, Killian Wright, talked about this in a video earlier this week, so definitely be sure to check that out. He had some great analysis on how Tony is going to fit into this team. But, Michael, any thoughts from you on Tony's fit and just how big of a commitment this is for Dennis?
Yeah, I feel like most people probably know what type of player he is now. Good on both sides of the ball. Still pretty raw, but insane athlete. Slowly molding into a multiple level scorer, which I think is really important, and has a lot of good defensive tools as well. He can bring the ball up the court a little bit. So emerging has really kind of a do-it-all player. 6'9", 215, from Zephyr Hills, Florida. I think that's how you say that. Anyway, yeah, I think what's the most important part about this commitment is the surprise nature of it. He was either supposed to take more visits after. I don't remember what his visit schedule was exactly. There was either more after or multiple before. Just based on like reading reports and things like that, it kind of seemed like Missouri had fallen not out of the race, but fallen behind in the race for Bryant. And one, he picked probably the best possible weekend to show up to Columbia. I mean, that had to have made a difference. Being there for that game, that certainly had to have made a difference. But this solidifies Dennis Gates as one of the best recruiters in the country. And that's really all I have else to add about it. I mean, pairing up, I know Killian talked about him and Jason Crow, and it's pretty clear that they can make a good pairing. One thing that I've been talking about with some people is what this team could look like as a whole by the time these two arrive and whoever else ends up being in this class, because it doesn't seem like it seems like there's a possibility that they could add more. That Tony Bryant and Jason Crow could be in a position where they have to be two of the better players, if not two of the best players on that team, not this season, but the one after. So that could be a really interesting universe where these two players are taking on some lead roles for Missouri. But, not what I was expecting at 9 a.m. was that Monday? Right? Yeah.
Or
not
Tuesday.
what I was expecting. Tuesday, yeah. Not what I was expecting at 9 a.m. on Tuesday. Certainly got me out of bed pretty fast, but impressive commitment nonetheless. And the surprise nature of it, I think, really shows that Dennis Gates is one of the best recruiters in the country.
And you mentioned, as far as what's next, Aiden Chronister, a prospect, is going to be here September 20th, that weekend of the South Carolina game. I mean, just overall, what should people be watching from Missouri basketball recruiting?
Yeah, I would say there's two names, and you mentioned one of them. One of those guys is Aiden Chronister. The other is Tristan Reed, who recently took an official visit. Two guys who could be very impactful. Reed is Link Academy guy, number 69 in the country, plays power forward / center, 6'9", 230. So obviously not traditional build for a center, but can play a little bit of that small ball. So he recently took an official visit to Mississippi State, I believe. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I think Chronister ranked as the number 71 guy in the country, according to 24/7 Sports. His rankings are a little bit all over the place. But he's a Arkansas guy, 6'7", 180, one of the better shooters in the 2026 class. So landing both of those dudes would certainly round out the class a little bit. And from what I know about Jason Crow compared to national rankings, he's one of just the best pure scorers in the entire class, and he's got a lot going for him. But when it comes to three-level scoring ability and shooting the ball in general, he's one of the best in the country. Chronister, I think most people deem him one of the better, if not, top 5, top 10 of the best spot up catch and shoot shooters in the country. Tristan Reed is a big physical presence. I think he averaged around 2 or 3 blocks this past EYBL session over the summer. And then Tony Bryant as well, just a really impressive athlete and has a lot of two-way tools. If that's the 4-man class that Missouri ends up with, that is a darn impressive group of people. They hold on to the number 1 class in the country right now. You would think that would keep them in contention for that number 1 class. And we talked about them having a 3 to 4-man group, at the beginning of the summer, in the middle of the summer. This is not exactly how I thought it was going to look. Jason Crow, I mean, we know that Jason Crow was not on our radar at all until it happened and he was here. And Tony Bryant was a guy that I think kind of came along in that same group and maybe mentioned before, but the team in the lead kind of fluctuated off and on with Missouri and NC State. And I want to say like Kentucky was in there, and it was just kind of all over the place. So it has been all over the place, but now that these two are set, there's the potential to add 2 more. I think it's, again, clear that Dennis Gates is one of the best in the country at recruiting top level talent, but this class for 2026 could be a really impressive one.
Absolutely. All right. That's going to wrap us up for today. So appreciate y'all tuning in, and be sure to do the same for all the rest of our coverage over at Missouri Tigers on SI.